What happens the moment someone compares you to someone else? It doesn't really feel like a formal critique, but it almost feels like a comment. It's feedback, right? Your boss says, I gave you the chance to present this, but it didn't land. Look at what Bob did. That's the standard. So you nod, you register it, and on the surface, you think it's about your performance. It's like motivation, it's like a soft push to do better. But the truth is different. Your work hasn't really changed. It's the same idea, it's the same effort, but the way it's being judged shifts instantly. No one really announced it, but the rules of the situation are rewritten. Now, most people hear this and they just treat it like feedback. It's a reference point, right? Maybe something to improve upon. But if you've ever been on the receiving end, you know it lands differently. You're not just being asked to perform, you're actually being measured relationally and against someone else, based on a standard you didn't set and against a metric that's like never fully explained. That's the shift. And it's pretty eye opening. How your ideas are received, which opportunities land, and how your work is seen without actually touching the work itself. So, what happens when you realize you're being compared? So, in a lot of ways, comparison feels natural, right? Think about it. Buying a car, a house, a new phone, we are always comparing options, features, price, style, what fits, what works, what feels right. What works in markets, though, doesn't exactly translate well into people. And that instinct follows you to work. So, let's say your boss points to someone else's success. Maybe it's a colleague who handled that presentation perfectly. Now, it's framed as a lesson, a model, they say, something to aim for. Seems reasonable, right? Compare, learn, improve. But the workplace is not a market for cars or houses. Here, you're just not being evaluated on a choice or a product. You're being evaluated relationally against someone else, against their ideas, their style, their results. And when you're the one being compared, a part of you thinks, okay, I get it. I need to do better. But another part hesitates. It's like you ask, wait, why am I being measured like this? It's harder to name, but it matters because you're noticing what's not being said. The unspoken standard, the invisible metric, the way your work is now measured against someone else. And you have to wonder, is this the most productive, healthy, and mature way in the workplace? And before that moment, your work stood on its own. It was your thinking, your execution, your judgment. Then the comparison comes in and everything just sort of shifts. You're no longer judged by your work alone, and you're being assessed against someone else. That's an entirely different space. It's no longer about, is this good, but it's about how does this measure up against that person? So the frame changes, and subsequently, the way things play out also change, right? So the comparison itself might seem small. It's done casually, almost offhand, but it brings something new into the room. It changes how your work is seen. Performance stops being just about what you did, and it starts existing in relation to someone else. And this shift doesn't just live in the comment, it spreads into how you think and act. And you start questioning your instincts, you rethink what is actually good, right? What that even means, and you notice how others are being judged. And then you adjust your approach, and sometimes even without realizing it. Now, to be clear, this isn't just about one boss or one meeting. It shows up everywhere. It shows up in teams where a few people quietly become the benchmark. It shows up in industries where careers are constantly measured against peers. It shows up even inside your head when you catch yourself comparing your progress to someone else's trajectory. And the comment doesn't just have to sound harsh. It's almost invisible sometimes, right? Well, this is how they handled it, or notice what the team is doing, or some of us are moving faster here. The comment by itself might feel harmless, but over time, it changes everything, right? It changes the game from independent evaluation to relational evaluation. And that's when the situation begins to move differently. People don't just hear the comparison, they start orienting around it. So the effort shifts, the focus shifts, and decisions start getting filtered through one question. What does this look like compared to someone else? Instead of a healthier, more durable question like, what's the right move here? And each small recalibration adds up. And over time, it quietly reshapes everything: the way people act, the way work gets judged, the way influence starts to spread. Then eventually, the whole situation is being navigated differently. Okay, so let's go back to that moment. Your boss comparing you to Bob. Now, it's really tempting to focus on the tone or the delivery and whether this counts as like good management. But that's not the most interesting part. The real question is, what did that comparison do to the situation? Because in that moment, it didn't just offer feedback, it shifted the frame and it introduced a new reference point. And it's impossible to fully ignore this once you start to see it. Now, your boss might think that they're giving a nudge. It's like a little motivation, like never hurts, right? See what's possible, step it up next time. But the moment comparison lands, it doesn't exactly motivate. It shifts the frame of how your work is seen, how it's measured, and how it's interpreted. Decisions get filtered like, how does this look compared to that person? Instead of thinking of it as like, what's the right choice here? Now, your boss might imagine they're lighting a fire. Now, what actually sparks is a recalibration. It's a new baseline, a relational benchmark, and that quietly rewires everything. And this is why comparison hits so hard and why it can feel uncomfortable. It's not just judging what you did, but it's quietly redefining how judgment happens. It changes the lens. What's tricky here and why this is so powerful is that the evaluation isn't about what you did. You're being measured against someone else, not openly and probably not fairly, but it shapes everything, right? How your ideas are received, how opportunities land, what gets noticed. When that perspective shifts in your mind, the game changes and you start seeing which moves actually matter, which signals are real, and like which are just noise. You notice patterns that might have been invisible before. Who gets spotlighted, who gets credit, who gets brushed aside, and over time, that's what builds or erodes your standing. It often happens without anyone like actually saying a word, but it accumulates gradually. Who's called on for high stakes projects, who's trusted with client facing moments, who is written into the narrative of success. The insight here isn't about resentment. Think about it instead as clarity. Understanding that relational measurement is the lens your boss or your team uses lets you respond differently. You see the rules of the system, not just the rules on paper. And then you can start working within it, right? Without being pulled into someone else's metric. You stop spinning on the same treadmill of comparison and start choosing which challenges are worth taking on, right? Which battles actually move the needle and where your leverage lies. That's the real shift, the one most people never actually notice. But it changes everything about how your work is seen and also how you're seen without really changing the work itself. That shift, that moment you first get compared, changes everything.